Welcome, strangers, to Talkumentary, a show where we watch documentaries and then we get together and talk about them.
All right, get in here. What is your name?
James.
Kenesha.
Bird.
Now I want you to repeat after me. We are here of our own volition.
We are here of our own volition.
We are prepared to be marked. We are ready to be branded.
We are
prepared to be marked.
We are ready to be branded.
We give ourselves to you.
We give ourselves to you.
Good. Now I want the public to know that we are a part of a new episode of Talkumentary. Hi, listeners. Hi, friends. My name is Jeff, and you all now belong to Talkumentary. Please sign this release form so you can't sue me when something inevitably bad happens to you tonight. Y'all signed that release form when you came in?
Of course. Okay.
Sure. You have all made me very aware of your physical and mental limitations. You can expect to get those tested and pushed this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to meet our survivors. Over in the corner, being waterboarded, my very beautiful, the bird, Nikki. Hello.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
I'm awesome.
Good. I know you're awesome. You can tell me things I already know.
Oh, thanks.
Over on the other side of the room, being forced to fist a raw chicken, Mr. King James himself.
Oh my God.
Ah, Lord.
Hi, James.
Hello.
And a very, very special guest this evening, all the way from Sin City. That's Las Vegas, if you don't know. Joining our crew this evening because she wanted to test her own limits, our friend Kenesha. Hi, Kenesha.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining our show. We wanted to have you on a couple weeks ago when you were here, and I was begging you. You're like, I'm tired, Jeff. I'm like, well.
I think I went home that night and fell asleep in my clothes and barely made it to the bed.
Yeah. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Hopefully this doesn't get too scary for anybody and we don't push anyone's limits too far. But let's get into it. So tonight we all put on our plastic shirts, we wrapped our hands in masking tape, and we ran out without pants on into the night to endure an 80-minute documentary released in 2016 called The Blackout Experiments. The Blackout Experiments examines the immersive horror experience known as Blackout, in which participants willingly take part in a haunted house type event where the scares are tailored to each participant's individual fears.
I started to have some second thoughts about whether or not I should do this. I signed my life away going to this place. You know, we all live once, and I guess we all want to do something that's risk-taking or scary.
It felt like S&M.
Upon receipt of this email, fill out the questionnaire below and send it back today.
And I see a camera on and it's watching me.
They want you to have a traumatic experience.
What do you want? Serious fear. No answer. Shut up.
I believe that Blackout has actually transformed me.
I'm playing with fire, and somehow it felt rewarding.
I'm sure it could seem like we're a cult.
Down! This is what you want! This is what you want!
This was wild.
It was.
Nikki, I know you didn't watch this one and you're here filling in, but you're in for a real treat tonight, I think, because this one was weird. What'd you guys think? Those of you that watched it.
Well,
Like just first impressions.
my first impression, well, just off the title alone, I thought, man, this must be something about like a drug addict film. Is what I was thinking.
Okay.
No, Blackout.
Yep.
But after watching it, I'm like, wow,
This was weird.
This is
I didn't
weird
know
stuff.
Yeah. So again, this is something where people willingly consent to basically, in some ways, be tortured, to be scared, to not know what's happening,
And pay for it.
And pay for it. I'm sure they were paying a decent amount too. It sounded like it was kind of an exclusive thing. What were your thoughts, Kenesha, when you?
I wrote several times on my notes. What in the actual bleep?
You could say it. This is an explicit podcast.
I don't want my aunties to hear this or something. They'll be like, she doesn't cuss. I do sometimes.
She's got to remain a sweet angel.
Yeah. I'll say it for you. I was thinking, what in the actual fuck? Because this one was weird. But weird ones are what make for fun conversation. So this was directed by Rich Fox, produced by Chris Curry, cinematography by Michael J. Pepin, distributed by Gravitas Ventures. So I should have known when I saw Gravitas Ventures pop up at the very beginning that I was going to be in for a real treat, because this is the same production distribution company that did The Sleepless Unrest, which was our lowest rated episode we've done so far. It was a fun episode, but it was an awful documentary. So for a lot of reasons, a lot of the same reasons I didn't like The Sleepless Unrest are some of the reasons that I didn't care for this documentary. But the difference being, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier, this one has some content in it that I think we're going to have a fun conversation on, because the psychology behind putting oneself in these situations willingly is it's interesting, because I'm lacking other words. We streamed this on Tubi, so if you haven't seen it, Tubi is the place to see it. The Blackout Experiments is certified rotten on Rotten Tomatoes with a 45% tomato meter with 11 reviews, an audience score of only 41 with over 50 ratings. There'll be a link to all of the credits and things like that in the show notes. If you haven't seen this and you want to see it before we go any further, this is your spoiler alert, so you can back out now if you want, and we'll let you out the door and we'll lock it and tell you that you're never allowed to come back. But anyway, for those of you still willing to push your limits, let's move forward. Let's talk about why we chose to watch the Blackout Experiments. And I guess I'm the one to blame for this. Plain and simple, I thought this one looked super uncomfortable, and I think I was right about that.
You were.
I wanted something that might seem actually kind of scary. I should have known better than to pick the same company that did the other documentary, but you live and you learn, I guess. And I liked the idea of talking to you all about your thoughts on putting yourself through this sort of thing. So anyway, had any of you seen this or heard of it before we watched it for this show?
Nope, this is my first time.
Yeah. It's your first time, James? Welcome to the show.
Oh, hey.
Did it surprise you in any way?
So I will say that my shock came from a place of curiosity, not a place of judgment.
Right.
I just was strictly very curious about, like you said, the psychology of why they were doing this.
Yeah.
And why they did it multiple times.
Yeah.
Most of them did it multiple times.
Definitely want to get into that because, and we'll talk about this further, but it's nothing unusual to try to push your limits. We go to haunted houses, we go to amusement parks, we go to, people go skydiving, people, things that are for a rush. So to me, it's not that surprising that somebody out of curiosity, out of sheer I guess desire to be pushed to sign up for something like this, but to continuously go back, I have some thoughts about that. let's get into some of our favorite or least favorite details about the Blackout Experiments. But first, here's a quick synopsis for this documentary. The doc looks, like I mentioned earlier, at an event known as Blackout, an immersive horror experience in which participants consent to take part in an event made to make them question themselves and how far they are willing to go to face their fears. Each event is tailored to the individual's fears, which they relay to the event coordinators prior to fully entering the show. In Blackout, performers are allowed to touch participants, unlike most other fright attractions, and participants are supposedly, from what I read, given a safe word if they grow too uncomfortable or scared. But they actually never mentioned that I heard in the documentary.
That's a question that I have on my notes.
So
is there a safe word?
Yeah, so in the Wikipedia definition or whatever synopsis, it definitely says that they're given one.
Okay.
But I couldn't find if Blackout was still a thing or not. Besides, I think there's like a show you can go see. Right. But anyway.
I guarantee there was no one in this documentary used a safe word.
That's what it seemed like, yeah.
Yeah.
In the film, filmmakers...
Nikki's face right now is really funny.
Yeah.
She's like, what?
I know. I'm just like, what in the hell?
What'd you get yourself into?
In the film, filmmakers interview several of Blackout's repeat customers in order to understand why they continue to return to the event. They capture their reactions to various frights, and for some, the news that they have attended too many Blackout sessions and are asked not to return, which to our boy Russell, that was the worst news he could have gotten.
Russell.
So Blackout's essentially a haunted house in for lack of, better terminology. It's an exclusive haunted house that is catered to your own personal fears, as well as being allowed to be touched by the staff. So to me, this documentary sold this experience as a lot worse than it actually seemed. Like when I was, I wasn't there. So the buildup and the unknowing, that would be kind of tough. And they did speak on that a little bit where they talked about the anticipation of not knowing. But to me, this was just like a more extreme haunted house. Did you guys get that feeling? Like, I didn't feel like anything they did besides maybe like the waterboarding part was, and we'll talk about some of the things that happened in there, but to me, there wasn't that much that was like, that extreme. And maybe they didn't show everything, but did you guys feel that way, or am I alone on that?
I think they definitely didn't show everything. I mean, who was it? Josh and who's the other one? Christian?
Yeah, I don't remember their names. I'm gonna be honest, I
the
didn't
creators,
follow them. Oh,
they
yeah.
Didn't they said that they didn't want everything to be filmed. So
Right.
I think there was definitely a lot of stuff that they left out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say an extreme haunted house.
Yeah.
And I don't know, almost like, I guess, a psychological thriller. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it was definitely more of a psychological thing than a physical thing. There was humiliation, there was, some binding, the psychological torture. There wasn't any what I thought of as being real, like pain or anything. But most of it, besides like the waterboarding was,
and the choking.
Yeah,
or
there was some
not choking. What was it?
Yeah, they were like
suffocating with the bag.
Yeah, they put the bag over asphyxiation. James, what's the matter over there, buddy?
Because the whole thing was just hilarious. Man. it started off with this 60s monster. So you get to thinking, okay, this is gonna be some type of creep show, and everybody talking about I was drawn to the dark side. I was drawn to the dark, and it had nothing to do with any of that, really.
Yeah,
but
no,
still. It was some creepy junk going on.
Yeah.
And kind of like Saw.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of, yes.
Yeah. Right. But much more tame, but also real life.
And also like you didn't die at the end.
Yeah.
Most of
and if I'm being honest, which I'm going to be, I think like we said, the content for the documentary was super unsettling. It was very interesting. the concept that people consensually put themselves into these situations where they have to push all their limits, test their fears, test their psychological fortitude, I guess. But full disclosure, I think this documentary was super dumb. I wasn't like, I feel like this company, the people who make this, they try way too hard with the, play it up to be scarier than it actually is, or it probably really is. The sounds, the dark footage, the way the staff sort of mysteriously just sort of brood around, and they're denying interviews, but then they're calling back and giving interviews.
I thought that was kind of weird.
To me, that feels so forced. It feels very fake. It felt a lot like the Sleepless Unrest for those of you that watched that. But again, I like the concept behind this. If this was a real thing, which I believe it was, when I've been to haunted houses, I've often thought, I could make a really scary haunted house that really scares you if you had, without just the fake blood and the guy in the mask who can't touch you and there's just smoke, whatever. But something like Blackout where you actually are put into situations that could fuck with your head or with your safety and all that. I mean, obviously that's not for everyone. It's probably not even for me. But when I've gone through there, I'm like, there are ways that you could do this. And I think they touched on that. But I feel like maybe their fan base got a little bit too into it.
Well, isn't it always, well, I'm pretty sure it's scientific fact that there's a thin line between pleasure and pain.
Right.
And actually, I believe it's that they're both the same. It's just your brain processes it differently.
Yeah.
So one of my thoughts was, how is this any different than like BDSM?
Right. It's not.
You are signing a contract and you're looking at that contract and saying, okay, I can handle these limits.
Right.
I won't go beyond this or whatever.
Yep.
You talking about S&M?
No, I'm talking about BDSM.
What is that?
It's the same as S&M. Yeah.
It's
I think
like
there's
bondage,
beat me, hang me by my toes,
dominance, submissive, masochist.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Is it sadism and masochism?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's basically I think too.
Yeah.
Because if you, just like you were saying, I thought about, like I talked to a licensed therapist like that. I mean, she has a bachelor's degree and everything. And at first I thought it was serotonin, but that's something that just makes you feel good and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what it basically really, as you come down to it, it's like I got here that these people really got into it for a high. Yep. A dopamine kick is what it is.
Yep. And adrenaline.
Adrenaline. They made them feel like pleasures, mental pleasure, motivation, and satisfied, should I say. Yeah. It's more like they could feel like they achieved something.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than depression.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of touching on the same thing. When myself, I met some guys when I was in the military that had gone through like BUDS training, like Navy SEALs training. And it's like, I never had a desire to be a Navy SEAL, but there's a piece of me that's like, I wonder how I would do in that training.
Yeah.
And I would probably do it. It's the same kind of deal with like boot camp, right? You see the horror stories about how boot camp can be rough and all that, but it's also, there's a pride thing once you've done it. Yeah, it sucked, but
I did it.
I got through it. I'm alive on the other side. I have memories. I have a story I can tell. Yeah. And, so I like I said, I get that. When it's kind of BDSM feel, there was a very like underlying like sexual tone to this documentary.
Because the one guy, he even said he wanted to be hit and stuff like that. I like, look at this nut.
Yeah.
That's what I kept on thinking. These people are nutty as a nutcracker. But each one of them all had, if you listen to the documentary, all had issues. One was violent crime happened to him. Another one was sexual abuse. Another one had OCD or something like that. Yeah. And what is it called? Compulsive disorder.
Yeah, OCD.
Yeah. OCD, same thing. Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
So the CD in OCD stands for compulsive disorder.
Okay, thanks. God, I thought I knew something.
You do.
You do.
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, I am kind of short. The ladies don't worry about that though. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Lord.
just kidding.
Oh my God, James.
Oh my gosh, boy! But even in this, and they was talking about it. One of the guys on this that went out to the Blackout wife was a addiction therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and she thought that her husband was just going overboard.
See, I take everything that happened in anything that wasn't actual footage from the Blackout experience, I took as like I took with a very large grain of salt, because I felt like it was so forced and it was like bullshit. Like, I don't know, my bullshit radar was going off, and like all the little stories, like my wife is whatever, and like, and I have some notes about that, and I'll get into that a little bit, but I just felt like a lot of that stuff, I just didn't. I don't know. I was skeptical of all of that.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, how do your wife just know where you're going? And everybody's like, it's an everyday thing. You can have sex with people. You can do this with people. You can do that. You can do this. But go to Blackout is too much for this or that. I mean, it's just weird.
Right.
I mean, like, she didn't, I don't know. I couldn't do that. I couldn't tell my wife,
Hey, I'm going to go do this
right.
crazy experience
It does
where they
seem
choke
like
me and...
Yeah, it seems like it's like a drug.
Right.
Like that's how they get high.
That dopamine.
Yeah, that
That's what
dopamine,
makes
like
them
you
feel
said, it's
high.
almost like a drug for
Yep.
them.
Mhm.
And then there's people who do too much of it, or
Yep.
people who become accepting of it, vice versa, whatever.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's what they're kind of like getting that high off of the control and
the lack of control.
and the lack of control.
Their overacting though really took me out of it a lot. And the one guy, the Russell guy, how he was talking about like I came from real darkness. He was like, and he kept saying darkness keeps coming back to me, and darkness and darkness and darkness. And then when he told, and this isn't to downplay anybody's situation or anything, but when he told his story about how he grew up in darkness, he was like, I grew up in the shadow of an older sibling who was real rebellious, so I had to be the good kid. And that's where his story stopped. I'm like,
right, okay.
Where's the darkness?
Right,
Like,
darkness. Right.
I'm not trying to downplay again. Everyone's got their own stuff. I'm not saying he told us everything, whatever, but the way it was filmed, the story was told, it was like, I'm going to tell you about this real dark secret that,
Yeah,
that
like
I have.
killed somebody or something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's people with it feels like, even if it's unacceptable to say out loud, is that there's people with a lot more darkness than that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone's got a story, so we can all give a why behind what we do, no matter what, whether you had a sparkly rainbow childhood or a dark one. Everyone's got reasons for things.
I could see the lady with the sexual problem, how that could be something dark.
So Allison Fogarty, I'm going to speak on her for a second.
Mm-hmm.
When she first came on the screen, she looked familiar to me. And then she mentioned that she used to be addicted to inhalants. And it clicked. And I realized that if you've ever watched the show Intervention, there was an entire episode dedicated to her because she was addicted to the air cleaner, like duster.
The inhalants?
The inhalants.
Yeah.
So she would... I think they said she went through like 12 to 14 cans of inhalant a day, and it just screws up your brain. So I was like, okay, she has some addiction issues already. She has an addictive personality. And this came out long after the episode about her addiction. And in the years since, we actually just earlier watched a little clip where she had been recovered for like 7 years or something like that, and even that was before this. So I don't know, maybe Blackout helped her keep away from that by fulfilling her addiction. I'm not here to speculate, but that's what I'm doing anyway. So, so her story was interesting, but then the other guy saying like, it seemed like some of their backstory, quote unquote, was pointless because they focused too much, in my opinion, on the repeat like customers of Blackout than they did on what Blackout was.
Right.
You know, so the one guy, you know, people thought I was gay because I liked books and theater more than football. Right. Well, does that have anything to do with this?
No. He followed it up with, though, it really had nothing to do with it, but he followed it up with his confusing a feeling when he was a kid and people calling him gay, the mix up in his mental mind of being am I this or am I not that? Not sexually matured yet.
Right.
So that has hung with him. That was his problem. His problem was sexuality, where he was too young.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. That's the guy that I hate to say it, but I thought he was one of the funniest besides Russell.
Yeah.
With that chicken. And that woman sitting there, she was just stabbing her hand through the chicken. And I don't know what she was saying.
Was she stabbing his hand through the chicken?
She stabbed her hand first. And then she went and sat on his lap.
Yeah.
And then had him do it. Shove it harder.
That was so uncomfortable.
Lord have mercy
I think
on
that
the
was
souls
the
of
point
men.
where I was like, I need to take a break.
Yep. Yeah, that
I
was...
didn't take a break. I didn't need more popcorn because this was hilarious.
Oh, my God.
James is every meme of the popcorn eating.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Watching with extreme
when
intent.
there's drama going on.
What is this stuff? What does this do?
So anyway, unless you guys have specific things you want to talk about more about the people in this, I don't really think we need to. But I want to mention some of the things they did to the participants that made it such a frightening experience. First, they sent kind of cryptic emails asking for personal information, height, weight, blood type, daily rituals that they may do, any disorders they have, history of abuse, their fears, all that kind of stuff, which, you know,
excessive thoughts and all that jazz.
Yeah. And, you know, Bird, if you're getting emails like that asking for that kind of information, that's going to probably set you on edge.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right.
You can't be asking me that kind of information.
If you need to know my blood type.
Yeah.
But it's all a mental game.
Right.
There was no reason they needed their blood type.
Yeah, because automatically I'm thinking, like, am I going to be losing blood?
Exactly.
Like,
right.
It's a mind game.
Yeah. Am I going to need a transfusion after
with
this?
the ritual.
Yeah.
What kind of rituals do you do? Mental and physical stuff, you know, all that stuff, you know, do you do it on a daily basis? Okay. Next question.
But it's all part of the psychological,
yes. That was the first way to get in your head.
Yep.
Get you to get in your head so that they could get into your head.
Yeah. Right. The experience starts long before you ever get there because they're sending you this email. Then they make them wait up until midnight to get the instructions to where to go. So being tired adds to your emotions. Not knowing what's going to happen adds to the excitement and the anxiety. This to me is, so like I mentioned, I was in the Navy, and in the Navy, there's this thing called battle stations. And I actually can't talk about it because I signed an NDA that I can't talk about it. So I can't do that here. But what I can tell you is that NDA, and knowing that there's a big secret around it, adds to the excitement. So what I will tell you is they exhaust you before you go to this thing. It's basically what battle stations is, and this is no secret. It's your final kind of test before you go from being a recruit to an actual U.S. Navy sailor, right? And they put you through a bunch of different things. But the very first thing they do is they hype you up because they tell you when you go through this, you can't talk about it afterwards.
Yeah. So you're like,
they're
what
getting
the
in
heck
your
am
head.
I about to do?
Yes. And then they keep you up all night, 24 hours. And so you're doing all these highly physical, somewhat scary, intense things when you're exhausted. Yeah. I can tell you right now, that was probably the part that was the most difficult. And so when I saw this and I realized that, I'm going, yeah, that makes sense. If you're going through that and you're already tired,
yeah,
it adds to the whole experience. And Bird knows this. I don't function well if I'm tired.
Same.
And she doesn't either.
Samesies.
Yeah. And,
Yep.
you know.
And even I know that too. You know?
Yeah. But when your adrenaline kicks in, then it's a different type of adrenaline. It's not like I'm well nourished, I'm well, rested but you're tired.
Yeah.
So then they make you go to a building with 3 little dots on the door, 3 little black dots, and they make you knock 3 times. They open the door and they grab you.
They snatch you up.
They just snatch you up and they force you to come inside. So immediately when you knock, they swing that door open and they pull you inside. They were pushing them against a pane of glass that looked like it was maybe a mirror or something. And they have them for the first of many times give an oath. I am here of my own volition. I want the public to know I'm part of Blackout. I'm prepared to be marked. I'm prepared to be branded. And I give myself to you. That's the thing we did at the beginning.
Yep.
They're making you say this. And it's still at this point, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That is freaky.
Yeah.
To have to go through that and just go, what the fuck did I get myself into? Bird, how is this making you feel not having seen the...
There's nothing about being uncertain and tired and scared that sounds good to me. Someone with anxiety, that sounds basically like a living hell. And I would not sign up for this.
Is there any part of you that feels like you would have any curiosity about what this is?
No. Zero. I have no interest in being uncertain and tired and afraid and
alone.
Possibly in danger and alone. Yeah. The alone. No.
Yes. That was another stipulation is you have to do it alone.
Yep.
You can't have a friend.
Nope.
I can't hold Kenesha's hand.
Yeah.
Help me.
And then once they get in there, they do all kinds of different things depending on who it is and what the situation is. But some of the things they made them do was to completely take their clothes off. They, for some reason, were covering their hands in plastic, or covering them in plastic and wrapping their hands in like gloves. And
what the heck is that about?
Yeah, and the masking tape. It's got to just be like a restriction thing, so to restrict.
Just use oven mitts.
I don't know. I mean, it was weird. They were at one time confronted by a fully nude female who then accused them of making them do things and being like, brand me, mark me, mark me. It was so weird. And that was one of the forms of psychological torture that I was like, oh shit, they're really thinking about how to get in these people's heads.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're not just doing things to them. They have someone come in there and essentially gaslight them to the extreme.
Yes.
Right.
This woman's going, why did you make me do this? Why did you make me do this? Like, you have to mark me now. You have to brand me now. And this guy's going,
what? What did
sorry.
Right. That was my man Russell right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Russell's the man. He's might well be the star of this place.
Why is Russell the man? Why do you feel like that?
Because this guy, he went back once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. He went back, and then I was into this show until Russell. They had him last. He let them come to his house and do it at his home.
Yeah, and
that's the part where I'm like,
nope.
Okay, you're taking that entirely too far. Because I consider my house, and I think we all do. My house is my sanctuary.
Yep.
My bedroom is my sanctuary. Now you're going to let these people come in here and create some sort of traumatic memories in your safe space.
Yeah,
that's his main
absolutely
thing.
not.
Yep.
Nope.
And then when they held him down and yelled, "So you're not coming?" Then he gonna say,
"What?"
He says,
"I'm not ready.
I'm not ready." I said, "Oh boy,
time
for me to get up, turn this thing off. This dude is just a joke. Here's one things that happen to him. He just love the beatings, the knock down, the tear down.
Like, how is this different from BDSM?
I don't know. I don't know.
He was like, "This is what I like. This is what I
exactly what he liked," because it was to him. It was therapy. It was therapy. That's what it was.
He got his
all
rocks
these
off
people
on that.
had therapy, basically. And there's a term for what they were doing. Blackout actually was doing this, and what they were doing is called what's it called? Hold on a second. I had it somewhere. It is called.
While you look for that,
I look for that.
So another few things, and we talked about this a little bit, was they were having to put their fists inside of a raw chicken over and over again in a strangely sexual way. Mm-hmm. One of the things that they were having them say is, I accept this as the temple of my worship, which is fucking weird.
Yeah.
Having to crawl through real confined spaces or be inside small boxes, being forced to put a real gun, to a woman's head and decide and be encouraged to pull that trigger.
Yeah.
So that's back to the sort of gaslighting thing. How did that kind of hit you?
So this was Russell, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was the one who has a big fear of failure. Mm-hmm. And before they did that, Josh and Chris were talking about how they were going to change the Blackout experience specifically for Russell.
Right.
And they were talking about putting in a part that had to do with him failing. And I believe it's Chris. He says that almost seems too mean.
Yeah.
And while, Russell is holding this gun to this girl, the guy behind him is screaming, "You're failing. You're failing everyone. Everyone's watching you. You're failing." And it's like, he has it feels like he has some sort of like Stockholm syndrome moment or like people pleasing moment where he's like, I don't want to fail them. Like, I love my kidnappers or whatever.
Well, he even said that.
Yeah.
He even said, like, because when they asked him, what do you want? Or I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what they asked him, but they like basically like, what do you want? And he's like, your respect. And they're like, wrong answer.
Wrong answer.
What do you want? Like you to love me or something like that.
Yeah.
And like wrong answer. And it wasn't until he said, and now I don't have it in my notes, but it wasn't until he said like to be free or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That they were like, right
Finally,
answer.
right answer.
And
this is when they were waterboarding him, right? I think.
They had him in the...
This is when he was in his house.
Yeah, they were in his house. Yeah. And that's like, Kenesha, like you said, well, both of you said that the home was when it would actually get scary to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the whole thing is scary. I mean, it is. But for me, when you know that you're signed up for it, it's like... Bird, it's like when we went to haunted houses, right? Mm-hmm. I don't get as scared by that because I don't get like the jump scares as much and all that, like, because I know what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
And I know that that's going to happen. I know that I'm safe. They're not here to actually hurt me. They can't actually touch me. I know those things. The realism in my head allows me to have a disconnect there, where for some people,
such as myself,
myself,
that it's harder.
Does not work.
Yeah, it's harder to put that distance there.
Yeah,
but if I were to agree to let that masked clown or whatever it is come into my house and do that, like that's a different, like, no, dude, I'm not.
Boundaries, boundaries.
Exactly.
And like, first of all, what are the neighbors saying?
Right.
When they hear me screaming. And second of all, like, now that they're in your house, like, what's to stop them from
doing whatever they want?
Right. I mean, I guess it's true wherever they are, but
it kind of makes me think about when they was saying stuff like, was this in this part before? Was this paper in this book or something?
Yeah. I thought that was dumb.
I thought it was dumb, but then I thought, well, they did ask for their home address. Were they sneaking over there and breaking into their house when they wasn't there?
Man.
I doubt that,
They were just psyching themselves out. And to me, that was one of the corniest parts of this was it reminded me of in Sleepless Unrest when, footballs were falling off the shelf. Like, guys, we know that you're just doing stupid camera tricks and whatnot. Like, and that was just, let's put it in there. Like, is someone in here? I swear I'm seeing things like change and different. I just didn't buy it. And maybe it was, maybe that was legit. Maybe, but I really don't think that they were going in there.
I'm with you on that. I just thought it was kind of funny though. Like, well, maybe they ain't. No, they ain't gonna get me caught up with you guys. Nah,
I could see though how that could maybe psych you out if you're really buying into that. But to me, it was that was something added to the documentary that I felt like was super dramatized or dramatized or whatever, and was super cheesy. It would have been to me much better if they just focused on the actual scary stuff that was happening to them. It had real potential to be like.
It could have been great.
It could have been great, and it wasn't. But like we do when we watch dumb documentaries, we look past all the subpar filmmaking and storytelling and look strictly at the content and discuss how we feel about it. And there is something very intriguing to me about people's desire to be scared. It's why people like horror movies. It's why people like haunted houses. People like to test the limits of what they can endure.
Yeah.
Has anyone here ever wondered if they would survive the apocalypse? Have you ever watched a movie or a show or something and been like,
I do not like zombies, but I actually, at the end of this, it brought about this thought of like, okay, what would my scene have been?
Right. I'm going to get there. I'm going to ask you that. So start thinking about that, because I have that written down to ask every one of you. James, have you ever thought about, like, after watching a sci-fi movie or something, you thought like, how would I do? Would I have survived? Would I ever, like, what would I do? Because personally,
well, James and I are black, so we wouldn't have been in the situation in the first place.
Depends on what you're watching.
Yeah.
Black people don't play. We just run.
Didn't I tell
ask
you
questions later.
I'm sorry, but I've seen the.
I told you. God, dog. If me and you are standing together, Jeff, a sound is there. Look around. I will not be in the same spot. I'm out. You better run with me.
Yes, keep up.
I've seen the Book of Eli, guys. I know that black people can survive. All right, so
if
Denzel can do it, you can, James.
That's right. Denzel can do it. I
yes,
can.
he can.
Yeah, I would survive pretty much. I know I will, because I already know I do hunts and traps.
But that's what I'm saying.
Stuff like
You've thought about that before, right?
Yeah.
So people like to think about what they can endure. I would imagine, James, you nodded your head when I mentioned like BUD/S or Navy SEALs training. Like, you've probably thought about, like, I could do that,
Yeah. I probably wouldn't pass it because I can't swim.
Well, and the thousands of people, the thousands of psychotic people who go out there and run marathons and things like that. That's challenging your limits.
That is, yeah.
That's
and people work to build up the endurance to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
People that go climb Mount Everest or whatever, they don't do that overnight.
Or even think about people getting a tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
you start small and then you go.
Yeah, and
before you know it, you have a sleeve.
Right. And you want the pain, and you go back for more. I mean, Jeff here is covered in tattoos, like basically head to toe.
You was getting tattoos for pain, man.
So
I don't get them for the pain.
Clearly,
yeah, tap me, baby. Oh, tap me. No, I'm just kidding. I better stop. I'm sorry. That was horrible.
You just said "tat me" right into the microphone. That's real gross.
Tat me.
Tat me.
Ew!
Oh, that sound.
I can't even visualize that. So
So, I guess where I'm going, people love adrenaline. They love skydiving, fast cars, and motorcycles. What's she eating?
Your shoestring.
Oh, my shoelace.
Sorry.
Oh, she'll probably just play with it for a second.
Anyone here an adrenaline junkie?
No.
I ride horses.
Okay.
I am a English jumper.
Okay.
Oh, good.
I feel like that is an adrenaline rush in itself.
Yeah.
So I have actually had a really bad fall. Well, it wasn't really a fall so much as a throw.
Okay. Yeah.
Worse.
I didn't fall. I was ejected.
I was ejected from the horse and got a really bad concussion. But as soon as I was cleared 6 weeks later, I was back on that horse.
Right. That's a good thing.
And I love
really
that. I love that
saying,
feeling of
back
jumping
on the horse.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly where the saying comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
James, are you an adrenaline junkie? No? Bird, I already know the
unless
answer.
Unless I'm
That is a
driving
big
my
old
car.
no.
Yeah.
I'm driving my car, then if you're going to race me, then I have to pass up my age limit and go back to 17. And I'm hitting 160, 120. Keep up.
Whatever.
No.
So I think the big question here that we probably all thought about when we watched this, Kenesha, would you do this? Is there any chance that you would do this?
I don't think so. Because I have a lot of anxiety and I also have ADHD. So part of having ADHD is that you think of everything. You are hyper aware of everything.
Yeah.
So that obviously leads to anxiety. I don't think that would be a therapeutic experience for me. Like,
I think it would be traumatic and not therapeutic.
It would add to the trauma.
Okay.
That is one of
But
the
I
side
could
effects of
see
that.
how for other people who don't have
and
that it could be therapeutic.
That's the next question I have is can we understand why or how this could potentially be something that a person craves? Like I think I understand that. I don't think I would sign up for this, mostly because I wouldn't want to spend the money on it.
That is another thing. I am cheap.
I don't know how much it costs and all that. You know, I will go on the roller coasters and things like that, but mostly that's because like our daughter wants to go on it and I'm happy to go with her. Or, you know, and I've done roller coasters when I was younger. I did those sort of things. I've never been what I consider to be an adrenaline junkie. I don't have to ride my motorcycle fast. I don't have to drive my car fast. I don't, you know, would I go skydiving? Yes. Do I have this like aching urge to get that adrenaline rush? No. I'm not competitive, all that stuff. But I could see myself being intrigued by, and I'm not going to straight up say, no, I would never do this. Now, what does that say about me? First, you know, that I was questioning that. Like, does it make me like some like weird in some way? Because
like Russell?
Well, but some, yeah, I guess but to me, like there's no judgment to them for doing that. Just like I would never judge someone for their kinks and things like that. I don't, as long as it's well, I guess I would judge for certain things, but you know, as long as it's consensual and it's, you know, and it's not hurting anybody any more than they're consenting to being hurt, you know, and whatnot, like no judgment, do your thing. You know, so to me, it's not driven by any kind of a sexual thing or anything like that. If there's a piece of it, it's just it's the question of how would I do? I watch more than anything else when I binge watch shows or something, it's usually something that has to do with like an apocalyptic something or something, you know, because I like to see how people respond to different situations. It's like a social experiment kind of deal. I like to see what the writers put on screen, you know, so that's why this was interesting to me. Even though it felt like bullshit, it would have been to me more interesting as a fictional film, you know, but the fact that they sold it as a documentary is kind of concerning to me. But all that put aside, I could see why this would be something where you get put in this situation, you walk out of it. It's a similar feeling that maybe I got after boot camp. Was like, I did it. It was shitty. It sucked. I didn't enjoy it, but I did it. And so the same thing with like the whole being in the military, for example. It's the most, you know, it's something I'm very proud of, but it was also something that took a big impact on my mental well-being, my physical health, and you know, my life in general. That cat is so weird. But so for me, but there's been times where even if it's just for a small amount of time that I think about those experiences and I go, yeah, I'd go do boot camp again.
Really?
No, I fucking wouldn't. But there's a piece of me, if it came down to actually signing my name, I would never do it because I know what it is. But there's a piece of me that goes,
I did it before. I can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't know. Do you guys understand that piece of this whole deal? Or is
I understand
it? I just think, like, so there were two types of torture that kind of really threw me. The first one where we saw him, like, asphyxiating him with the bag. Like,
yeah, that was
and then
rough.
the waterboarding. Like, those two are so very directly related to death that I'm like, that kind of almost feels like a different experience, because there's a difference between, like, I'm hurting someone or I'm getting hurt, to, like, if this person doesn't take this bag off my face or stop throwing water down my throat, I'm going to die.
Yeah, that was his major problem, though.
Yeah.
Is that he said, if you cover my face, I have a hard time breathing and all that jive or whatever he was talking about.
That was so weird, because when he was talking about that, I was like, how do you know that? Because this was before he went in. I was like, how do you know? I mean, obviously everybody who gets their face covered with...
He probably was hanging himself with a bag.
And secondly, when I have a question about asphyxiation. When you're getting covered with a bag...
I don't have an answer for that one, but go ahead.
We are clearly the resident experts of asphyxiation, so please.
But if you're getting covered with a plastic bag, why don't you just open your mouth and put a hole in it?
Because his hand was over his mouth.
But I mean, like, you've seen the movies where they...
Yeah.
Like,
well, they usually got their hands all bound and everything else. Or you get
and then what was the hugging? Did you notice that after, like, the asphyxiation, when when the kidnapper would take his hand off of the kidnappee, if you will.
Yeah.
He would hug him, or he would, like, comfort him in some way. And that's why it reminded me of BDSM, because I don't know if you've seen, like...
Or if you've, like, read 50 Shades.
Or read 50 Shades or any smutty book. Yeah. You know that aftercare is a thing, and aftercare involves, like, whoever the dominant or the...
Submissive?
Well, whoever was the, like...
Okay, yeah.
The main person inflicting the pain or whatever always takes care of, like, goes and gets water and cuddles and helps the submissive person or whatever. So that's why I automatically got that BDSM feel from it. Yeah. Because even after Russell was holding the gun and he pulled the trigger or whatever, the guy hugged him afterward and was like, shh, like, comforting him. And I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's probably, hearing that, there's probably more ties to that than they alluded to on the documentary. I mean, I don't want to generalize and say that anyone who's ever participated in Blackout is doing it for, like, some sort of sexual gratification or something like that. But it definitely raises the question, like, you know, if that's what you're into, that maybe this is the realm for you. That's definitely not. It's definitely not something that, you know, speaks to me. I guess in that world.
Thank God. As his fiance, thank God.
Yeah. By the time this comes out, you will be my wife.
I will be his wife when this comes out.
Yeah. As long as you don't get cold feet and, like, run away at the altar or something.
She will not do
Whatever.
That.
I know.
Not possible. I can't get cold feet. We're getting married on the beach.
That was a great dad joke.
But
all right. So, quiet. Everyone be quiet. We're going to play a little game here.
Play a little game.
We're going to... Shh. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. We're going to turn off all the lights. Not really. Let's pretend this blackout experience is completely real and not made up for this. All right? It's not a cheap thrill, but rather it's as real as these filmmakers wanted us to believe. And you have decided to sign up willingly. You want to be subjected to fear, torture, exposure, humiliation. What type of experience do you think would push you personally to your limit? What are your fears? we don't have to get into like super deep fears. Like we don't have to put that out to the world, like anything to do with like, sexual abuse or your family's being harmed. Like I'm not talking about that, but like just in a blackout type situation, what would be too much for you? I'll go first. For me, I think probably with the exception of, like I said, I'm not going to talk about, my family being in danger. Those are my real fears. But first, again, being awake for a few days. If we're setting the stage, if I'm exhausted, I'm in trouble. And then being put into a position where I can't fully extend my limbs. Being physically like bound or restricted to movement or to breathing. If I were chained up, unable to move, or having like my breathing restricted, like, it's one thing to be suffocated, like where you cannot breathe, but just restricted, like it's difficult to breathe. To me, that's the most terrifying part. I could handle the pain part, but the restriction piece, the inability to do anything on top of the exhaustion, that to me, what's my safe word? Because I'm getting out of here. I can't do it. James.
To me, it would be the waterboard.
Yeah.
Because I almost drowned. And that would be something that they could use on me.
Yeah.
That would be a lot. That'd be fear. In fact, blackout would probably be blackout because if I got loose, it'd be some swinging going on.
There'd be a black man out of there.
It'd be black man out of the blackout.
You'd be out on the street with your plastic on and your booty hanging out and just running down the street going, nope.
I don't think so. I can't see that. I don't want to see that. Only thing I'm going to stick with is I'm just going to stick with waterboarding would be the thing that they could use against me.
Yeah.
All the other stuff, no.
So they bring you chicken and say, go to it, man.
Stuff it. It's like,
stuff it.
I mean,
you're like, sure.
No, I'm going to say, sure. Where's the celery at?
Where's the celery at?
I mean, when you stuff chicken, you dice up celery, you dice up stuff, and you make your stuffing.
I got it.
Okay.
I understand.
We got it, Jay.
Yeah. You guys are going to the left.
It's just gross.
The stuffing. We got it.
Kenesha, what's too far for Kenesha?
Too far for me would be, I think someone talked about this, the like being left alone in an open space and not being able to see or being bound.
They did.
And not knowing what's coming next. Because I'm very much, and I think that's an anxiety thing.
Sure.
I'm very much okay, what's next? What's next?
Yep.
What's next? What's next?
I can handle it if I can see it coming.
If I can see it coming, I can prepare myself. And that's what I always do. Like before any meeting, before anything, I'm like, okay, if this situation happens, this is what I'm going to say. If this situation happens, this is what I'm going to do. And like when I go to restaurants, I'm like, okay, there are my exits. This person looks weird. I'm going to keep an eye on him. Like as long as I can see what's coming next or what could potentially be a problem, I'm good. But when I can't,
I'm very much seeing why you get along with my lovely bride over there.
Yes.
Because
that's why we're twins.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The
separated at birth.
Yes.
Yep. There was definitely I can feel that in both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bird, what's your situation? I mean, your situation, as soon as you have to knock on that door, I know you're out. But what's too far?
It's pretty much the same as what Kenesha said, but possibly for me, a smaller space. Jeff saw me actually lose my mind in a haunted house last year. It was not a fun moment for me. I almost fainted. So yeah, if I was in like a small space or couldn't see in front of me, but I also didn't know what was coming next, which was that perfect storm in that haunted house.
Yep.
Didn't know what was going to happen next. And I was in a small space I couldn't get out of.
Yep.
Yeah, that's too much for me.
Yep. Yep. So thanks everyone for giving me my ammunition to push you too far later. I'm just kidding.
I know, and now this is going to go out to the world. If I get kidnapped, I'm screwed. Done.
I'm going to be locked in a closet later just because Jeff's going to have a lot of fun.
No.
Just
I'm
kidding.
just going to bring hot coals because we got to cook that chicken.
You know. If you don't stop with the chicken.
It's the chicken. It's all about the chicken.
Oh my God.
What would have been great is if the chicken was one of those squeaky chickens.
Oh yeah. This screaming. Then it would, hey, that would have fit.
That would have been, that would have been perfect.
Someone needs to like overlay that with the sound of one of those screaming chickens. So at the end of the film, one of the main characters, Russell, states that after his blackout experiences, after some time passed, he felt like a stronger person for having, quote, killed the demon that was causing him to be afraid of failure. Do you all think that a situation where you might have to go through your fears or face your anxieties or force yourself to conquer these things, do you think there's a possibility that you walk away from that stronger and more confident?
Yes.
Or are you the type, okay, I know James's answer. Yeah. Are you the type that feels like I want to stay as far away from those so that I can heal? And I feel like I know what this answer is going to be. But James,
first,
talk.
I'm ready for this one.
Do it.
I was ready for it. But no. Oh, anyway. Well, me, myself, I would have came out. I see what they're doing. Let me put it that way. I wouldn't do this stuff personally myself.
Yeah.
But what it's called exposure therapy is what it's called.
Right.
Exposure therapy is something used in therapy. It's like flooding. Flooding is doing what they were doing. Astrophysical confrontation with the person, forcing them to go against their fear and letting them come out.
Yep.
It's also used with people like people that have anxiety disorders in children's, OCDs, PTSDs, panic attacks, social anxiety, and anxiety disorders for older people, and people with what they call it, phobias.
Yeah,
it's used in all those methods.
It's like taking a person who's afraid of heights to heights to get them to see it's not as scary, or has like a crippling fear of spiders. Yeah, and that's kind of what my question was. Like, I'm of my personality. I do okay with the what did you call it? The exposure therapy?
Yep, exposure therapy. Yep.
I do okay with that in some regards. Like, you know, if, for example, like, and I've never been afraid to like pick up our pet snake, but the first time you pick him up versus the 100th time you pick him up, it gets easier and easier and easier. Right. You know, same idea is that, you know, if you have a crippling fear of something physical, like a spider or something, right?
Yep.
Well, it doesn't mean I want to go handle all the spiders, but if I have exposure to it, to maybe I can still function as a human being in the presence of a spider, you know?
It's kind of what we do. I didn't know this was a word, exposure therapy, but when I was younger, I used to do that. I used to try to do things that I was afraid of, for my mind wouldn't flip out when it happens. I could be more at ease that way. I could think, you know, about that. But I also learned that if you did get at ease, it would only take a little thing to happen to you for you to flip right back to the same exact thing again.
Those are my thoughts exact. I mean,
go ahead.
I think, again, with the anxiety thing, we are always going to be aware of things that can happen. So it doesn't matter if one time I held a spider and it was okay.
Yep.
What if that next time the spider that I hold is a black widow?
Amen.
Right.
Yep.
That's always good. Like, I'm always like, no matter how good an experience is,
right,
I will always find a way to be like, okay, but this could happen.
Right. Like me before I get on an airplane, I'm like, the last 10 flights I took were just fine, but this could be the one that kills me. Like, I know how many things can go wrong.
It takes that little rumbling in the plane to make you, okay.
Right. It takes one little bump, one little turbulence, and I'm running to the bathroom. So my brain doesn't give a shit about the 10 previous flights.
Yeah.
The guy was like, let's de-ice this. We'll be right with you. Hold on. I'm like, okay.
Just finishing up a maintenance item here. What?
Exactly.
What maintenance item?
Yeah, you better find me a bus because that's what I'm getting on.
Put me in another plane, man. God,
I've never understood people who are like, who get mad when their flight gets canceled because the plane is messed up. I'm like, really? You want to get on that?
Right.
Like, here are the keys.
Yeah.
If you can get to your destination and be good,
keys.
you can keep the plane and everything.
Yeah, have
but
that.
Like, seriously?
Uh-huh.
No, I'm good. I'll wait till tomorrow.
Right. I will happily wait till tomorrow. I choose life.
Yeah. And I definitely see what you're saying with the anxieties and the fears. Like, if there is a certain amount, like I said, it maybe it won't cure that fear. It just could help.
It make it better.
Potentially help your mind understand that not every situation. So maybe it helps to quell that some. But if you're thinking of all the different situations, then have fun living in a life of anxiety.
Yeah.
And
it's
I think
a real
it
good
depends. Yeah, it's a really fun time. And I think it depends on how you're overcoming those fears. Like I personally have done EMDR therapy.
Oof.
And it can be super tough because you're for people that don't know, it's eye movement desensitization.
I don't know what the R is.
Remediation. I don't know what the R is. So forget that now.
Yeah.
Something about processing an eye movement. It's a biofeedback, whatever.
Trying to create new neural pathways when you think
it's supposed to help the sensitivity to the trauma and to the trigger, but it's done mindfully and it brings you back to a calm place at the end of the session. So I can see why with people with anxiety, that would be a good way of almost like exposure therapy, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But in a mindful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that closely related to like what's those goggles you use to get to see through virtual reality therapy?
Oh.
Is that closely the same to that related?
No.
I know they got that. That's part of one of the exposure therapy. They use
so that you're not actually exposed to it.
Yeah,
it's a
but
different.
It's virtual. But EMDR is like where you're laid down or sitting up and you're thinking of the traumatic memory. Sometimes with the eyes closed. Okay. Sometimes they'll have vibrating things in each of your hands, and it's like it goes from one side to the other, and then there's a light bar that goes from one side to the other, and it helps the feedback in your brain from one hemisphere to the other. So it helps create new pathways.
Wow.
So more of your brain is used, like the logic side and the feeling side, and it helps you process those.
It's basically,
things.
And you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically trying to help your brain to sort of forget for lack of a better term, the trigger, like forget which part of your brain it like ignites.
Yeah, like lowers the sensitivity.
Right. So that you're creating a new experience with that trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds neat.
Yeah,
it's like a gentle way of exposure therapy. Well, even though it doesn't feel gentle when you're in it, but it's better than actually standing at the top of a cliff or like thinking of the traumatic thing. It's gentle, so I feel like it's a way of exposure that kind of guides you instead of just throwing you in an elevator if you're afraid of elevators.
Yeah, or if my fear, for example, or if my trigger is someone yelling, well, I'm not going to all of a sudden get less triggered by that if my spouse is always yelling at me. That's not the right kind of exposure there. And it all, not to get too far off topic, but it all depends on where that fear came from. If that fear is rooted in some kind of actual trauma, well, then that's a hell of a lot more, I don't know. It's going to be a lot stronger, I guess, of a fear than if it's just I get a little creeped out by spiders. Well, yeah, me too, but it might not be an actual fear of mine.
Arachnophobia is a strong fear. I had a lady at our job. She had that arachnophobia, and I did not know it. But somebody else, they had threw a spider. It was one of those fake spiders, because that's where I worked at the time.
I know exactly.
And she lost Sea lost it. Sea
Yeah.
lost. The sea was shaking.
Yep.
That's
I
so
like,
mean.
oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's weird.
Yep. All right. So, takeaways. We finished watching this. The credits roll. How do we feel? Kenesha, our guest, how did you feel after once it ended?
I felt like I went through like a roller coaster of emotions.
Okay.
Because at first, like when I first started watching it, I was like, I am deeply disturbed.
Uh-huh.
Then I was like, okay, I'm kind of curious. What's happening right now?
Yep.
And then I was like, okay, I see why they're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. James?
Close the same. I watched it. No, like first time when I watched, I was like, okay, this is gonna be good because it's gonna be talking about addicts. I want to see how they get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it turned out to not be addicts, but a bunch of people that would have issues themselves. That's gonna put it on, make it good. People that have their own mental and physical issues of their own, and try to go through this therapy type thing to help heal them. It helped some, and some it didn't help. But I'm gonna add to that I think these people that went through it, they should had professional help also,
well, Yeah, and that's to speak on that. If you're doing this for therapeutic reasons and not for the thrill of it, I feel like that's a problem. Right. Because these aren't like scientifically tested or social experiments. They called it the Blackout Experiments because I think that's just what they were doing. But far as I could tell, these guys were not like...
They don't have credentials.
They don't have credentials.
When they told Russell he couldn't come back because he was finished or whatever, I was like, well, what credentials do they have to determine that, oh, okay, he's faced his fears and he's good now. He's free.
Right. No, I think it was probably them saying, I'm tired of him signing up to do this. It's time to try someone else.
Because he was all happy and stuff.
Right.
Beat me.
Yeah. And, wow. So if something like this was created by professionals, which, maybe something like that could be helpful. It'd be hard for me, but to believe that, I guess. But if it's just for the thrill of it, to me, that's much less harmful than going there because you feel like you need that. That torture, I guess.
So, Nikki, you've watched Queen Charlotte, and you've seen the unconventional ways that they handle King George's. What do you think about that and relating it to?
I feel like you can't fix trauma with trauma, and I have a hard time believing that someone who wants to do all this doesn't have something not feeling right, and with no judgment, but not feeling right in their mind. I just don't feel like you fix a person with more torture.
Right.
I don't feel
have
like
you watched Queen Charlotte?
No.
So it's a show on Netflix, but so basically George has some, I don't even know what his affliction is, but he imagines things, hallucinates things, he talks to the stars and has these weird tics or whatever. But of course, as a king, you can't have anything mentally wrong with you.
Right.
So the doctor in this, whatever, he decides that the way to cure him is, he says, like, you've always been given everything your entire life. You haven't been told no. You haven't had to, like...
Basically, something like you haven't had to actually, like, experience anything. You haven't had to work for anything.
And so he puts him through this torture. He dunks him into water, King George.
Yeah.
I don't know, he puts him in this electric chair and like electrocutes him.
And you can hear him screaming in the episode. And
he's verbally abusive to him. He calls him boy. This man is a king.
Right.
And he's like, boy, sit down. You'll do what I tell you to do. And like, he lets no one access him. He completely alienates him from his entire...
Yeah, see, to me, that is, and this is just with my small amount of education and experience in psychology. So I'm sure there's someone with a lot more education than me that could argue anything. But To me, that doesn't sound like it's helpful at all.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's like what Bird said. There's to try to heal trauma with trauma, or to try to heal an actual mental illness with abuse that's completely counterintuitive. So that's why
but if someone is more masochistic where they enjoy pain,
right,
which that's what this show seems like, is like people who are masochistic and I guess sadistic, if you're the
and that's exactly
kidnappers.
Yes. And I think if you're doing this for the thrill of it, whether it's just to see what you can put up with, and the one time maybe, or even maybe twice, you go on a roller coaster twice, but the repeat, you're starting survivors groups, you're going and this becomes your life. This becomes your identity. This becomes, what you look forward to. That doesn't feel healthy to me. Right. That feels like you're trying to use this as a healing method, and it's probably making things worse. And I wonder if an uneducated group, the Blackout, I'm not necessarily calling them uneducated, but they didn't show any proof of any professional credentials or anything. Right. So, for them to say, we probably need to cut ties with some of these people, because if they're relying on us for their own mental health and for this, that, and the other, like I could see myself, if it was me running a thrill ride essentially, and these people are like basically were their gods, that's kind of scary. I might have to put a wall up and say, and they'll do it in the way that they feel they need to, which is to give him one final thrill and tell him he's done.
I'd love to know what Dr. Stutz has to say about.
That would be interesting.
That would be interesting.
Check out our episode on the documentary Stutz. It has been out for several weeks. Yep.
You still talking about it?
Go for it, man.
Okay. Survivors. Now, I thought that was... Oh, let me back up right quick. When you were talking about how people go through all these problems and they don't actually get help, the reverse effect of this type of therapy is anxiety moves, flashbacks, get nightmares. You can have panic attacks. Aggressive behavior can make even worse than what you are. And I'll just add that on there. Now to the survivors. Survivor is like my man Russell that been through it more than once. And they all get together, and I think they just start to talk about personal things that happened to them and all that. But they're obsessed with being hijacked. Their lives being hijacked, and that to me it becomes like a fuzzy, blurry world between paranoid fantasy and reality.
Yeah,
that's how I want to say it
for sure. And I think they may have even spoke about that a little bit, like, and that got into some of my skepticism about, are people really in their houses? Is the documentary crew part of Blackout to try to ease their mind and get closer to some of their fears and things like that? I'm skeptical about all that. To me, this was two nerds who wanted to make a scary experience, so they did that, and people got way too into it. That's what this was to me. And
are you talking about the Rich Fox?
Josh?
No, I'm talking about the guys who made Blackout.
Right.
Not
the director.
No, but that's what I thought. For me, after watching this, I felt a little confused. I feel like they didn't go into enough of. It was like halfway through the documentary, they were kind of jumping all over the place with who they were talking to and what the timeline was. They jumped all over the place, and little snippets here and there of them going through it. And I really wanted to see what people went through, so I was a little confused when they were in Blackout. Instead, they focused on the participants talking about how they felt afterwards and during. Like, I just want to see what goes on. That would have been more interesting to me.
What was the part about where they were talking, and the guy started speaking German? What was that all about?
Oh, he was speaking Icelandic.
He was speaking what?
He was speaking Icelandic.
Icelandic? What's that? Oh,
from Iceland?
Yeah.
Sound about the same. I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah.
Sound German, but
I would have liked to have seen more of Josh and Chris's, I know they didn't want to do interviews or whatever, but I would have liked to have seen more of their why. Yeah. Why are we doing this?
Yep.
That would
and
be nice.
what
Agreed.
What background do they have?
Right.
Like, why did they feel like they needed to? Would they do the experience? Like,
right. Yeah.
Why did they feel like they needed to create this?
Are you guys just people who worked at like the haunt, you know, at what was it, Knott's Berry Farms or whatever?
Yeah.
And you know, you're just a guy that's into that, and you wanted to go a little more extreme. Do you have a background in psychology? Do you have because that's what this was. This was psychological.
Yes.
And I don't think that there's any question about that. All right. So we have reached the part of our show where we need to rate this wonderful documentary with an official documentary rating. Each crew member scores the documentary on a scale of 1 to 10 items, with 1 being as bad as being stuffed naked into a tiny wooden box, and 10 being as good as being stuffed naked into a tiny wooden box, if that's what you're into.
With a chicken.
Nothing? Okay. With a chicken? Stop with the chicken.
Oh
Kenesha
my gosh,
said.
you have to leave the chicken alone.
That's what I want to tell the guy. Leave that chicken alone.
Chicken and stuffing.
Celery.
Chicken, oh my God. Let the chicken be.
The item that's used for scoring each week depends on the content of the documentary that we watch. This week, we'll be using black dots as our rating item. So let's start with Kenesha. You're our guest. How many black dots do you give the Blackout Experiments?
I gave 4.
4?
Because I feel like the story of the actual documentary could have been better.
Yep.
It felt a little too forced, some of the acting. Mm-hmm. Well, it felt like there was a lot of acting.
Yeah.
And it felt very forced.
Yep.
But the actual content, like the idea, was good.
Yep.
And I think obviously it brought up a lot of questions.
Yep.
And yeah, that's
good.
what I got.
Thanks. Mr. Jameson.
I gave it 4 also.
Okay. Reasons?
Reason is because I learned a little bit more about therapy. And lots of different types. I mean, this what I named. There's a lot more to it than that, you know. And I found it interesting, and I really liked it. So
you really liked it, but you only gave it 4.
Yeah, I really liked. I only gave it 4 because it still was stupid.
Yeah,
it was still stupid.
Agreed. Yeah,
it was stupid, but this
the research that you were able to do.
The research that I was able to look it up and say, okay, we got to mix up now this stupid show. So we got let's get. I mean, documentary. Sorry about that. Yeah. Documentary. We got to do something.
Yep.
Let's do something. I mean, they should have just thought about the famous line.
What famous line?
You have nothing to fear,
but fear
yourself.
Who said it? Anybody
King
know?
James.
JFK.
JFK. There you go, girl. All right. And she nailed it.
Bird, you didn't watch this one, but you got to hang out with us down here. So after hearing what you've heard about this documentary, what would you have rated this, do you think?
Probably a 3. Maybe a 2. Yeah. A 2. Mostly because...
A 2.
I only have like cliff notes and the conversation, but I can't give it 0 because I do like the content and the information. Mm-hmm. And I find it fascinating, and I always find the human brain fascinating and what makes it do and want the things that it.
Yeah.
Can I ask you this? Are you glad that you didn't watch this one? Or do you wish that you had?
Now I want to watch it out of curiosity.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I'm with all of you on this one. I gave it a 3 black dots, and that's because I think that the documentary itself was really bad. I mean, it was poorly done. It was cheesy. It was overacted. It was overproduced. It was the storyline was subpar. But to say what you all have just said, it sparked good conversation. It sparked curiosity. The content, like Kenesha said, was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to give this as bad as I gave The Sleepless Unrest because that one had no redeeming qualities. This one was at least about something interesting. So I gave it a 3. So after averaging everyone's scores, the official Talkumentary rating for the Blackout Experiments is 3.25 black dots. We should have just given this 3 black dots because that's what
I know, that would have been the perfect ending.
But 3.25 black dots, that's all right. So thank you all so much for joining us. Kenesha, this was a pleasure.
Thank you.
I hope you come back and join us sometime.
Of course.
Do you have anything you want to say to our beloved listeners before we sign off?
I mean, keep coming back and keep listening.
Thank you.
It's a great podcast.
Well, we appreciate that. I've reached the point where I actually don't want you all in my head right now. So if you were all smart at all, you'd let me leave. And I only say that because that's what they said in the documentary, the stupid documentary. So repeat after me. I am prepared to stop caring what others think.
I am prepared to stop caring what other people think.
I am ready to accept my failure.
I am ready to accept my failure.
I will not be a coward.
I will not be a coward.
Tomorrow I break my routine.
Tomorrow I break my routine.
Tomorrow I will not need this.
Tomorrow I will not need this.
Tomorrow I will not need Talkumentary.
Wait, I'm not ready.
I will always say Talkumentary.
I'm so glad that's what you guys said. Let's talk about next week's episode. Next week, we explore the possibility that perhaps the reality we live in is completely fake. Perhaps we are living in a game and we are being controlled.
This game sucks.
Perhaps we are being told that we need to watch a documentary called A Glitch in the Matrix.
Ooh.
Yeah. Part science fiction, mind scrambler, part horror story. A Glitch in the Matrix is a multimedia exploration of simulation hypothesis. Through the eyes and words of animations of those who suspect the world we live in is not real. Have anyone heard of this or of simulation theory at all?
I have.
Yeah.
So I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
But I do. Have you seen the conspiracy theory iceberg?
No.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
This is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But when I'm in one of my non-anxiety modes,
yep,
I do like to dive deep into conspiracy theories because they're very interesting.
Yeah.
But I have heard of this one, and it's...
Yeah, so this one's got some wild animations and it's got a lot of good reviews and things like that. So I'm excited about this one. So everyone go check out A Glitch in the Matrix before next week's episode. It can be streamed on Hulu. So join us as we decide whether to take the blue pill or the red pill, one documentary at a time. Please go out and rate and review our podcast on your favorite podcast streaming services and let us know what you think of our show. If you want to connect with our crew, look for @Talkumentary Podcast on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, or you can email directly to King James himself at info.talkumentary@gmail.com and I will forward it to him.
So let's do that.
Yeah. On behalf of our guest, Kenesha.
Hey.
Mr. King James.
All right.
The lovely Bird.
All right.
DJ in the post-production booth and the entire Talkumentary family. I am your host, Jeff Kalaski, and I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you keep your minds open and be kind to one another. Goodbye. I feel like I need to say how did they sign up? Like, how did they tell him that he was done? Like, you will not. What did they say? Swear to me.
That reminded me of Bane.
Batman. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I thought of.
Or we will. What is it? We'll be out of here or something like that.
Yeah,
this is the last.
Or relief.
I'll be like,
yeah, or we'll end it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we.
Okay, bye.
You will never hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Get out of my house,
bye.
motherfucker.
Wait.
Bye.
What did you say? What did you say? Like, but I'm not ready.
I'm not ready.
I'm not ready.
You're not ready, dude. You're not ready.
James, say bye to our fans.
Oh, bye. Bye, everyone. Sorry. Oh, my God.
That was fun.
It was.
That was so much. Good job, everybody.